Welcome to Season 4, Episode 2 of the Not Your Mama's Autism podcast. I'm Lola Dada Ali. The month of January 2022 marks 1 year from the time I first spoke with Ivie Okwuegbuna, an assistant head teacher for inclusion and safeguarding lead in an inner London school in the UK. In addition to education and certification showcasing her dedication to educating neurodivergent children, Ivie runs 2 businesses, one focused on advocating for children requiring more individualized curriculums, and another that is a platform that helps to inform parents and their children on potential career paths, amongst many other things. She is currently studying leadership courses at Harvard University. Ivie sat down with me back then to speak to what the special education landscape looks like through her eyes, where she lives in the UK. It was interesting to hear her perspective on how something like special education, now having to be administered within the context of COVID-19, was being contemplated by both facilitators and decision makers. As we are in the midst of a rise of yet another variant, I thought it was important to play this episode in order to get a glimpse into the thought process of a passionate educator in the UK who took time out of her schedule to speak to me about her philosophy generally, how educating neurodivergent and/or disabled children differed elsewhere outside the US, based on her own observations, and how COVID-19 changed the landscape in those earlier days for her. So, with that in mind, let's get started. Welcome to the Not Your Mama's Autism podcast. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Let's start from the top.
Okay, my name is Ivie Okwuegbuna. I grew up in Nigeria, but I have been in the UK for almost 20 years. I'm a mom of 2 teenagers. And like I say to people, above every other thing, I am a teacher. So I started off my profession as being a classroom teacher. And then I just progressed up the ladder, and now I'm an assistant head teacher for inclusion in a primary school in inner London.
So how long have you been in this field, and what drew you to it at first?
Okay, so I've been a teacher for 24 years, but I've been working with special needs children for 10 years. That's my present job. Like I was saying, I probably came across children with special needs right from day one when I started teaching in Lagos, Nigeria. But for some reason, that was just not the focus. Everything was all grades driven, and you just, okay, those children are there, they're at the bottom of the class, and they probably always remain there because no one was pushing for interventions and things like that with the children for them to make progress. So I guess that's my first vision, or my first thought, my first encounter with special needs. But more recently, in my last job, I was just a regular classroom teacher, and I had a boy in my class that had social, emotional, and mental health issues. And I just used to struggle with what to do with him, or what were the triggers. And then I started doing some research, and then the first time I stumbled upon special educational needs and the various categories and what you could do. So I walked up to my head teacher and I said, I'd like to get some training on special needs. And that's how I got into it. And I just started learning, reading, researching, because I'm some sort of a perfectionist and I always want to do things right. So I'm like, if I don't know about this, I have to learn about it to be able to give my very best. And that's how I started off in special needs.
What do you enjoy most about your job?
the progress the children make. It just puts a smile on my face. It just it just makes it all worthwhile. Believe you me, as I'm sure as you know, it's not an easy job, but just to see a child smile, a child who's had a meltdown and has come out of it and can smile and can do something they weren't doing before. One of my greatest moments was one of my children with autism who actually said my name after having him for 7 years in the school. And he said my name one day. I just broke down crying. I seem to have a big thing of separating my job emotionally. I'm very, very heavily involved in it. So it gets to me all the time. I'm a crybaby. So you want to see what's making me tick, you see me in tears. that's how I just that's how I just get by every day, to be honest. Yeah.
So, with that in mind, what is knowing how connected you are with your job? What's most challenging about what you do?
One of the challenging things is when you see a child is facing difficulty and you just can't put your finger on it at that point. Knowing the child is having a meltdown or is in distress, or you see families in distress and you're just like, how can I make this better? How can I help? How can I support? What what have I done wrong? Or what have I done right? Or what do I still need to do more of? Is usually what really gets to me, and I leave work with it thinking, what can I do? I mean, just before we started chatting, I just got an email from one of my parents, and I'm sitting down there already writing, okay, how am I going to make this work? Because, as you know, we're having another lockdown in London, and things are a bit complicated, should I put it that way. Hopefully, we'll get to the bottom of it and we'll be able to sort it out. But usually, just seeing families and children in distress is quite challenging. It could be very, very very, very distressing for me as well because I always feel I have to do the best I can in my job. And part of doing my job well is finding solutions to difficulties for the children with special needs and their families.
Let's dive in, if you're comfortable, a little bit about some of the challenges associated with the lockdown and the COVID-19 era we live in overall, but specific to where you are in the UK. Tell us a little bit about that.
I live outside London, but I work in inner London. Like I was saying, it's a 3 hour commute back and forth to work. Both areas are in tier 4, which is the highest level of lockdown. So everywhere is more or less closed, and technically only the schools should be open. But with the schools being open, we're only going to accept vulnerable children. That's children with social workers or children with special educational needs. They have an educational healthcare plan, which is like that. It's the highest form of special needs you can have, and you need day-to-day support. And those are the only children we're going to accept into school. So my school has a population of 420 children. We're talking about taking children right down to probably only 25. It's quite challenging because I'm thinking, how are the parents going to cope? What are the parents going to do with them from 9 to 3? How are things going to work out? And I know a lot of schools and authorities say, oh, there's remote learning. Now, when they keep going remote learning, that does not always work for my children because there's so many things to take into consideration. You have to take into account what the barrier of need is, how old they are, and the availabilities of this technology in the home, the dynamics of the family, what do the parents do? There's so much that goes into it. When we had the first lockdown, about 5 or 6 of my children with special needs were not going to go online because that's not what they know online to do. Talking to somebody at the end of the camera, whatever, saying what to them, that doesn't work. They're more of they my children work more on one-to-one, hands-on, face-to-face. In fact, one of the things we had to do was make sure we called the families once a week, which is just like a telephone conversation. Are you okay? Are you all right? Do you have enough of this? Do you not have enough of that? When it came to my special needs children, I had to do a video call because over the phone didn't really connect who I was. But seeing my face, let me see, more soothing for them. So one of my little boys said to me, familiar face, as soon as he saw me. I said, oh, I know who she is. I see her. It is challenging. I mean, I know this coming week is going to be, it's going to be quite busy. I really don't know how we're going to figure a lot of the things out, but some of the things we're going to have to do, like hard copies. So if I've got books and things like that, I'm probably going to have to literally drive around their homes and drop it off at the doorstep because the internet bit didn't work at the beginning. It just didn't. So those are the things I'm thinking, yeah, going to be really tough. But we'll try and work it out at some way. Again, I work for a government school. I don't work for a private school. It's a government school, and I work in a deprived area of London. So everything is not what many people might feel are just readily available to working class. It's not that way. Many of my families didn't have laptops. So how are they going to do it? Using the parents' phone. They didn't have enough money for the credit. Not everybody is on unlimited calls. So that was the initial barrier we had to get through. And then parents will call because it never happened before. So one of the things we just did straight away was right. Okay, we want there to be some learning. We want there to be some form of family bonding time, some activities. We just made paper copies of a lot of things. And I made a routine timetable, printed it all off, put it in an envelope, and I went and dropped it in homes. I just dropped it at the doorstep, and I called and I said, look, I've dropped something outside. Use that in the meantime. I mean, one of my parents just said, I don't have any paper. And my son loves to draw. He needs that. It's a soothing thing for him. I just took a roll of paper, dropped it at the door, and left. It is what it is, and we had to really think at the top of our feet. But because we've done it before, it shouldn't be too difficult now. It shouldn't be too difficult. And also because it's a pandemic, it's a virus that we don't even, no one knows where it's coming from. Well, wear your mask, keep your distance, wash your hands. People are doing all of that, and still they're still becoming infected with it. So again, you also have to look at the teaching personnel. Do you have enough people to even do the online learning? That's another question mark, because when we broke up from school on the 18th of December, yes, it was spreading, but everybody thought, oh, we've got 2 weeks at home for the break. It will reduce. It's only skyrocketed. So no one had that idea that 4th of January, we were not going back to school. So this is all during the holidays. I mean, I had to text members of staff, make sure you check your emails. Have you got a laptop at home? Have you got this? Have you got that? And we all have to have another test done. And we won't be allowed back into school until we've got our results are negative. Bearing in mind, we've already had 5 tests because we've been working through since March face to face. So, of course, we were in the front line, and then, of course, we're probably the ones who could catch it the most. So we were always being tested in school. So it's something to think about. Yeah. Even when the children started coming back to school about June, when the government said, well, the rates were down below 1, the R rates were down below 1, we could accept more children back into school, which we did do. So it wasn't just special needs children or key worker children, or most year groups. Keeping that 2 meters physical distance with the children was more or less impossible. Because how do you tell a 4-year-old who is crying and who is hurt and comes to you and cries on you, what do? Do you go, no, step back, go back? You can't do that. I mean, it was tough, and it will be challenging coming the next few days ahead. But we'll see. We've got Monday and Tuesday to plan online because we all still can't step foot into school till we've got that test. So we've got some huge things to sort out.
So, how are you all being trained in the right protocol that you need to follow in order to stay as safe as you can, given the situation you all are in?
What we did before the children came back into school, we had a whole staff meeting. That's everybody in school on hand. We had a risk assessment. We had to change a lot of things about school, as in we have cleaners on site 24/7. We had to get rid of a lot of the furniture in the school. We had to change sitting arrangements. We had to change the way we deliver the curriculum. And one of the most important things, we couldn't mix bubbles. So typically, what we would do in our school is, if a child was in year 5, but cognitively was working at a year 2 level, for their numeracy and their literacy, that's their maths and English, in the morning, they will come down to a year 2 class, have their maths and their literacy, and then go back to their own home class in the afternoon, because we still wanted that sort of social interaction with their peers. But we can't do that anymore because children can't cross bubbles. Children can't cross bubbles. Teachers can't cross bubbles. So that was part of all the training we had to have. And we had to put things in place, buy like 50 webcams. Well, all that is all that was all in the first phase, so it should be a lot easier now. But training on how to use the webcams, how to have your flips up, and again differentiating, because you've got 30 children in a class, 25 of the children are working at that year level, expected year levels. You might have 5 who are not working at that level and working below. How are you going to differentiate? How are you going to hear them read? So that's part of all what we did. So we just had to be creative. Okay, I've forgotten what it's called in the States, but here we have teaching assistants. So we had to get our teaching assistants to hear children read on laptops, and they might be 3 doors from each other. But because we couldn't mix bubbles, that was part of the training we had to put in place. We also had to change our break times and lunch times and start school times and finish school times, so that the children were not mixing or meeting. We've got that training coming up. We're going to do another one Monday and Tuesday, because you also have new staff coming in, leaving. We have to do that all over again. We also had to have, we were even trained on how to take off our gloves and put on our masks so we don't infect our faces if you've been infected. Cleaning stations. So we had stations whereby we had aprons and shields and masks, because again, like I said, the special needs children who needed an adult with them throughout the day had to have PPE on, because different things happen at different times. So we had to have that done. That's another training. Forgotten most of it, but then I'm sure it'll come back to me.
Right now, you being on the front line, and you and your colleagues are basically public health officials at this point, as well as educators. Um,
Yes.
so how do you keep current in the latest trends in educating young people with special needs, aside from this huge challenge, this huge COVID-19 related challenge?
The way it works is we have specialist teachers in the borough, which that's all they do. They come into schools, they train staff, they observe lessons, they give you feedback, they write programs out for you, and they train you how to use the programs. They train you and the parents how to use the programs, and probably have 1 or 2 sessions with the children so you can see how it's done. Each school has got a special educational needs coordinator, a SENCO. So that person more or less takes care of everything special needs in the school. That's that's my role in my current school. So I have to train myself to be able to train my staff. And most of the time, we do something called, I usually have an action plan. An action plan is just basically everything that has gone wrong and how I'm going to make it right. So part of the things on my action plan would be like to train new staff on autism awareness, or to train new staff on people profiles. So I will do most of the training with the staff. Yeah, that's how we just get trained on what's happening. And if I'm stuck and I need help, then I scream out, I need help, I'm at crisis point, and somebody comes in to help me or trains me, and then I train the staff board.
In our previous talk, you mentioned to me that you are also in contact with practitioners in Nigeria.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about some of the challenges they've communicated to you and maybe anything you may have seen on the ground.
I mentioned that every school has a SENCO in the UK. It's a must. And you have to be a qualified teacher. And you have to go for a 1 year training in either university or whatever provider. You have to train you on special educational needs. Now, that is something, while talking to my colleagues in Nigeria, is not presently there. Different people come up with different remedies of things. So they haven't got one single unilateral body that regulates special needs in Nigeria, which will probably help, because then you will have people who will audit, you will have people who visit schools, you have people who write reports and things. There's just not one body. It's all different entities. So you can imagine there are well over how many thousand schools in, even if I take Lagos, and they're all doing different things. So who is doing the correct thing? Who is not doing the correct thing? And even if the correct thing is not being done, who spots it and who sorts that out? So those are one of the issues. Of course, resources again is a big issue. Just having basic resources, things like visual cards, even having like an apron. I remember I went and I did a training once, and I just said, just take an old apron and make sure it's got pockets, and just have your things in there. You've got your objects of reference, you've got your picture cues, you've got your routine, you've got those things with you at once, because many things you're saying and you're doing, they're quite abstract. So how are you going to help the child who, for example, probably has no language, or is just coming to just learning how to use routines or sequencing things? You're not showing anything. All you're using are words, and that does not always work. I keep saying I'm a visual learner. This is me in my 40s. How are you going to be working with a child who is 4, 5, and you're just saying things outright? No, that's not going to work. So resources, training, even structure. I went into one of the topmost schools, I'd say in Lagos once, and as I stepped into the school, the first thing I said is, "Oh, where's your lift? You guys call it elevator." And she said, "Oh, we don't have any." And I looked up, and they're like, "Whoa, 3 or 4 floors." And I looked and I said, if you have a child who is physically challenged, how is the child going to get up the stairs? And she just said to me, "Oh, we don't admit children with physical challenges." I looked at her and went, "What?" So those are simple things in planning, in structuring out what you need, even having a whole school approach to things. It's still not the class teacher's responsibility if there's a child with special needs in that class. No, it's the facilitator's role. Like I even said, with recruitment, where I work, because I work for a government school, the school recruits teaching assistants. In Nigeria, the parents approach a school, say, "Oh, this is my child, Jack. My Jack wants to start school here." Well, the parent may or may not say my child has special needs. Anyway, let's just assume that the parent says, "Oh, my child has special needs." The school will say, "Okay, we haven't got excellent facilities to help your child, but we'll take your child on board." So the parent pays X, Y, thousands of dollars for the school. And then the parent also pays for a facilitator to join the school and work with the child. One of the parents said to me once that her child's facilitator did not come to school for XYZ reason, and her daughter was just locked away in the sick bay for the whole day. And I'm like, what? She's like, she said it was just a mother's intuition that made her go to the school that day. And she's like, why is my child not in class? And everybody was stammering or not quite sure. And okay, I think she's here. Eventually, they found her in the sick bay, just sitting there doing nothing the whole day. So a lot of things with accountability, recruiting. I mean, the few times I went to Nigeria, I was overwhelmed because I was like, where do I start from? How do I help? What can I even do to help? Was my first question. What can I do? Because this seems really huge. So I just started working with 1, 2, 3 people and just giving resources, showing them how to use the resources and giving them the resources. And I tried to keep a network of just special needs teachers I talk to. They get in touch with me. What do you do about this? I don't know how to do this. What is your experience with this? And we learn from each other.
If money was no object, how would you go about improving the special education systems you've seen both in the UK and in Nigeria?
The first thing I will go about is training, because I wouldn't say it's even such a problem for Nigeria. Even over here, when you go to university here and you get your bachelor's degree in education, you usually have to do something for 1 more year to become a qualified teacher. With the 13 or 14 modules they do, it's only half a day spent on special needs. So again, same thing here. It's a lot of the teachers get stuck and they don't know what to do. So it's down to the school training their teachers, and for the head of the leadership team to have a vision and a passion for special needs. That's the only way it's going to work. If the leadership team doesn't see that as top priority, it will keep being pushed to the back of things. Again, you're just looking at probably 5 or 10% of the school. So it's very easy to let it slide or slip or not putting as much as you would for the other neurotypical children in school. That's the way I've just seen it. So in the UK, money is not so much the issue because you get grants and you have a budget from the local authority, from the federal government. But taking it back, if looking at it in Nigeria, you're just one step behind. So training of your teachers, getting them to know what is what the barriers are, what you can do, what interventions you can put into place, how you can track the progress. And even if that's not working, to be more, not just to say, oh, well, you told me to try this program for 12 weeks. I've tried it for 12 weeks and nothing has happened. So, well, I don't think this child can ever make progress. No, it's to go right. A hasn't worked. I can still try B, C, D, E, F. But you also have to have the knowledge that there's a B, D, C, F. to help.
Is ABA therapy popular in the UK? And is this a treatment available to children there, open or widely available, I should say?
Like I said, I've never worked in a private school. I've always worked in a government school. On the government schools, we don't use ABA. In fact, it's a no-no. But I know that some private schools use ABA. So you have the government schools which are free. They're free for everybody, and then of course you have the private schools whereby you have to pay for your tuition, and that's where ABA is mostly used. And the government schools, no. So it just depends on where you are, really. The specialist schools, even in the government specialist schools, ABA is not used.
You said it's a no-no. So why do you know why it's a no-no?
I think one of my specialist teachers is really experienced in special needs, about 30 years in the field. He just said about rewarding children for things that they could do without, the way he put it was, the children will eventually do that if you keep rewarding them for that, and that's what they know and they understand, then they're never going to do anything except that reward is there, that bait is there. Because I know I asked about it a couple of years ago, and he just said we don't use it here. He was someone that helped me along the lines earlier on in my career. Yeah, so kind of trusted his words, and I've not really interacted as much with the private schools because they're like specialist private schools. So not much about it now.
Where do you see the future of special education? Actually, before we get there, do you know of ABA therapy being used widely in Nigeria?
Yes, they use it a lot in Nigeria. Again, it's you hear a lot about ABA therapists. If you just go onto the internet now and you Google ABA therapists in Nigeria, lots of them will spring up. You will see quite a number of them. Yeah. I know one or two or three of my friends said that they use it with their children, but most of those parents are parents I realized that have come from America and moved to Nigeria. So it's interesting you asked that because, yeah, many of them like relocated from America into Nigeria. So I guess it's what they were used to, and I guess it's what they'd been using, and it worked for them. So
So when you say they use it in Nigeria, there are board certified behavioral analysts in Nigeria conducting ABA therapy,
yeah,
or
that's not what I'm not sure about a board conducting, but I know they do say they're ABA therapists. I don't know where they got their certification from. I don't know. It could be yes, they did get their certification authentically, yes, but I don't know. And like I think when we chatted earlier on, we do have lots of people who might do a 1 month course on the internet and then they say they're specialists, they're therapists. They just roll from there.
so with that in mind, where do you see the future of special education in the UK and Nigeria, globally?
I think I can speak more for the UK because it's where I live and it's where I work. It's evolving. It's getting better. It's a lot better than it used to be. Like I said, it's down to the leadership of the school. Actually, it's down to the leadership of the government. We're taking it right back because if they don't make things available, if they don't make the resources, if they don't provide the funding, things won't move forward. I mean, when I first started teaching in the UK, there was nothing like educational and healthcare plans. Or there used to be something called statements, but that used to be really, really difficult to get. But now, if you're a child with special needs and you have either healthcare issues or social care issues, you can get an educational healthcare plan. Now, what an educational healthcare plan is a document that serves a child from the age of 0 to 25. So there are things that will be in there to talk about what you need, college you can go to, what secondary school you can go to, what are the things that need to be provided for you after school care. It's quite a huge document, but it guides the path of a special needs child. That wasn't always the case in the past. I'm talking even 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. And it was far, far between. Maybe when I first started in my job, which was 10 years ago, maybe I had 2 or 3 children with a state. It was used to be called a statement, but now I've got up to 16. So it's just about providing that documentation that can help the child to make progress, can make resources, can make facilities, and can make institutions available for them. It even goes on to vocational school and things like that. In Nigeria, I'm not too sure if that is the case. And like I said, a lot of things are done on an individual basis. If I take it back to, okay, I work in a government school here. If I take it back to the government school in Nigeria, it's more or less null and void. Many things don't exist. Many things do not exist. It's that's topic for another day. I will say the government schools here and the provision of the government schools here are probably at par with the private schools in Nigeria. And of course, when they say private schools, there are different grades of private schools. So the topmost of the private schools in Nigeria could match here. And even things like having, what do they call it again? Oh, they always talk about IEPs. Yes, in the individual educational plans, they talk about the IEPs, but that just goes on from term to term. I don't think there's any document that takes children through their life or the early part or up to early adulthood. Lots of things are coming into place. I've met quite a number of people who are into special needs. They work with children. Again, the people I know and I've worked with had their certification in the States. So they were trained in the States, they relocated, moved back for whatever reason, and they own institutions whereby they help children with special needs. So that aside from an inclusive school, yes.
For parents new to this journey, what advice would you give them on how to make sure their children are seen by the system?
Um, if I look at it on two sides, first of all, starting off in Nigeria, I'll say parents new to this journey, I'll say educate yourself, speak to people, and fight for your child. Actually, in both continents, both countries, but whatever as the case may be, I'll say educate yourself and fight for your children. Be your children's advocate. Speak for them. I always say to parents at the beginning of any meeting, you know more than I do because this is your child. Your child is with you more hours than the child is with me. So you will know. And I always make sure that they tell me the expectation, what they need from me. And of course I'll provide my own specialist research or understanding, but most especially I'll just say talk. We have lots of that. There's autism in Nigeria. There's Nigerian parents autism. There are quite a number of groups. There are lots of groups around Facebook, but I'll just say just have somebody else to be able to talk to. Because I know it's not an easy journey. I know it's a journey you don't have all the answers to, or you don't know the end of the road, or you just can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. But I guess just having someone to talk to, having someone to bounce ideas back on, It's a good way to start. We have coffee mornings here, whereby the parent, well, in the olden days when people could visit schools, because now the parents are not even allowed into the school, whereby we just had, and the staff from Cozy Chair, tea, coffee, biscuits, and I give them 2 hours in a week. Just talk to me. Tell me what's going on. Tell me what you're struggling with. Tell me how I can help. And then I'm able to signpost them to organizations. I mean, it's a lot more structured here, maybe because of the realization and the awareness and the acceptance here, because you have Autism Society, you have bodies that give parents funds for summer holidays, you have the social work that they provide respite for parents, just 4 or 5 hours a week at the weekend. Okay, you can have the child while I can just have some downtime. There's so many things that go on, but except you ask or you talk to people or you seek out that information, you probably might not know. I mean, many of the people I know personally in Nigeria have children with special needs. I just signpost them to each other. I always say, is it all right to give so and so your number? I know she's been at where you are. Just talk and see. And that's it. Sometimes word of mouth, sometimes social media, sometimes phone calls, texts, various ways. I just feel if you don't ask, you won't get. If you don't speak up, no one will know.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Ivie, you can follow her at Mrs. Ivie, I-V-Y-O, Mrs. Ivie O, or at Learning Generations on Instagram. If you like what you hear on this podcast, please share and subscribe. If you are interested in the genesis of this podcast, particularly the reason why this podcast came to be, check out season 1 in its entirety. I've also decided to share parts of our story in written form through a monthly column titled The Caregivers Chronicles. If you're interested, you can check it out at psychcentral.com. That's psychcentral, all one word.com, a division of Healthline Media. You can also follow us on social media at Not Your Mama's Autism on Instagram and at Not Your Mama's Autism on Facebook. See you soon.
Not Your Mama's Autism podcast is hosted and written by my mom, Lila Dada Ali, and it's also co-written and produced by me, Fela Ali. My dad, little sister Alero, and I are all occasional contributors. My dad, Tosin Ali, also helps produce sometimes. Big thanks to my aunt, Bolane Williams Ali, who did our graphic design. See you guys soon.